So welcome everybody to Avanti Women's free webinar. In a month of vision and goals, I think it's important to build a financial strategy to support your vision. We were just talking about that. Or maybe one of your goals was to become more financially disciplined. And I think this webinar, Creating Financial Resilience, thinking through the decisions around important life events, is the perfect starting point to get your thinking time about your finances. And if we can just move to the next slide, I can introduce our guest speaker today. She's controlling the desktop, so she'll need to move to the next slide.
Sorry.
There we go. Our guest speaker is Jackie Porter, and she's an expert and also a renowned author and speaker, co-author of a book, Single by Chance or by Choice. And I had an opportunity to see a part of an interview. I think it was on Business News Network that featured Jackie, and I was really intrigued on how she presented her process to develop financial resilience. So it'll be a great session. I'll let Jackie take over and give you a little bit more information about herself, and then we'll continue on with her really interesting presentation today. So over to you, Jackie.
Thank you so much, Susie. Thank you so much for your support of this really, really important topic. I'm really excited to be working with Avanti Women on talking about issues important to women, and this is an issue that I'm very, very passionate about. Resilience is, I think, something I feel that's been in my DNA since being raised by a single mom, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And I think women are, all of you are here, for all of you that are on the call, I just wanted to applaud you because it is a subject. Financial literacy is something very important to me, and I know that women really want to be financially resilient and want to be financially literate, but there's lots of roadblocks. Some of them Susie and I were talking to, which is if it's not something we learn in school. So if you feel vulnerable about something, it's just harder to get started. So I just want to applaud you all for taking the time to be on this call today to do what you can to learn a little bit more about your finances. So I wanted to start off this session by just letting you know what I plan to cover. The first thing I want to talk about is what does it actually mean to be financially resilient? What does that actually mean? And the second thing is what are the top 3 financial risks you may face? And you'll be surprised about this because often when I talk about the top 3 financial risks, people think I'm going to talk about the markets. And we do there's a lot of publicity in the media about the markets, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're also going to talk about how the financial industry currently fails women, and hopefully this is changing, and I certainly hope that conversations like this one, the more that women demand of the industry, the more we can get from it. And I'm also going to talk about how you can invest in yourself and your priorities, and finally, how to have that all-important money conversation with yourself and with your loved ones. So thank you. So the title of my presentation is Don't Just Fall, Bounce. And why I talk about bounce and even bouncing back is life is not without challenges. We all don't get out of this earth. We don't get out of this earth. We don't get off this earth alive, first of all. We all know that. And there's usually no straight line to life. So we don't go through life where everything is perfect. Life is, everything just goes well. We all have setbacks. And once we embrace that that's just a part of the normal course of life, then it's a question of getting up, wiping the dust off and moving forward. So that's really what this presentation is about, is how can we bounce back? How can we bounce after falling? And it takes a little bit of skill, but it's awesome when you learn how to do it. So why is financial resilience important? There's a number of reasons why financial resilience is really important and why we need to talk about it more. First of all, the great news is women are earning more than they ever have before. So that's a really great thing when you think about where we've come from. We've got all these different movements going on right now, but the truth is women are set to earn more than they ever have before. a study I read recently said that women are poised to be earning and having net worth that equals about 52% of the North American, 46% of North Americans' wealth. So women are poised to actually start to take up 56% of North America's wealth. So that's a really exciting statistic. The other thing is that women make up almost half the percentage of the workforce, yet they're still shying away from becoming financially literate. And there's really good reasons for this, as we've talked about. However, this has led them to delay making financial decisions, or what I consider worse than that, having other people make decisions for them. So that's why I'm really excited that you guys are on this call, because if you're ready to embrace making decisions for yourself around your finances, becoming more financially literate, I'm here to partner with you in this process and talk to you about strategies that you can do that. So going into a little bit more what it means to be financially resilient, it's really having clarity. How many of you feel that you have a sense of what's coming into your household in terms of income and what's going out? How many of you use a budget to actually figure out how much money you earn, how much taxes you pay, how much you have left over for your priorities? How many of you actually run your household that way? So being financially resilient means really having an intimate understanding of your numbers, knowing your numbers. And if you don't, it's also understanding who can help you. There's a lot of financial lingo out there. There's people who are certified financial planners. There's people who are insurance advisors. There are people who are investment advisors. When you're dealing with these people, you need to ask them what licenses they hold, because the licenses they hold will give you some information as to how they can help you. Obviously, if I only have an insurance license, I will be able to tell you about insurance, but I may or may not understand, because I don't have the designations, about building a budget or developing a financial plan, if those are things that are important to you. If all that's important to you is insurance, that's fine. But if you're interested in learning how you can actually create a budget, build a financial plan, pay down your debts, you just want to make sure you're in front of the right person. So it's fair to say, I want to know what designations you have. What's your financial planner's level of knowledge or credibility in terms of designations? You can ask, because the designations that are very popular in Canada is a CFP, which means that someone who works as a financial planner can actually talk to you about all areas of your financial plan, can help you build a budget. So it's just important to know what designations are out there. And if you're not clear, because sometimes, as financial planners, we have all kinds of designations on our cards, ask the people that you're working with what their designations are and how they can help you. The other way to become more financially resilient is taking responsibility. And this is a really big piece. Taking responsibility means that you're basically prepared to look more closely at your finances, take the lead on the things that you want to know. So if you're someone who's in debt and you don't understand how much you're paying for interest and you really want to get out of debt, first thing to do is to see how much interest you're paying. So check out what your credit cards say in terms of interest costs, and start to look at how you can talk to the bank, talk to different financial institutions to lower your interest costs. Look at what your credit rating is. How well are you paying down the debts you have? So take a look at what your credit report says. A low credit score is anything under 650. So if you have a credit score under 650, it likely means it's going to be very, very difficult for you to borrow in the future. And if you have a credit score under 650, it also might mean that the interest rates that you command will be quite low as well. So take a look at your credit score. It is really the key to being able to pay down debt in the most cost-effective way. Really what you want to target is a minimum credit score of 650 or higher. Because the higher your credit score, the lower you're going to pay on interest. So look at your budget, look at how much you're paying for interest, look at what your goals are. Nothing fuels a plan, nothing fuels financial resilience more than goals. If your desire is I'm in debt and I want to get out of debt, or I want to start building my financial fortress, I want to start building investments, I'm worrying about my future, then it's time to take responsibility and embrace that. One of my biggest passions, and one of the things I say over and over again, my mantras to clients is try to live with intention. The way to live with intention is the things that you say you want to do, figure out a way to do them. Because if you don't, it leads to unintended consequences. So unintended consequences, a really good one is people say they want to get a will. They never get around to it. What does that cause? It may cause a lot of grief, a lot of stress in your family. So look at ways you can live with intention so that you can avoid these unintended consequences that people have when they're not intentional about things that they want to do for themselves and for their families. So everybody probably recognizes this lovely lady. This is Cinderella. I'm sure many of you grew up with Cinderella. And I think Cinderella is a very dangerous story. This is my own personal opinion. It's a very dangerous story to tell women because it's really the beginning of women giving over responsibility for their own happiness. And I truly believe that obviously for any of you who've gone through, you know that I have a book called Single by Choice or Chance. Any one of you who've ever gone through a divorce or a separation knows that there's no guarantees of anyone's happily ever after, and it's up to both people to make that happen. And I think the Cinderella myth just really often lulls women into giving up responsibility for their happiness, potentially giving over their resilience to someone else. And who knows what the future holds for the Prince Charming that they might be relying on. They could get sick, they could die, they could leave. And where does that leave the woman who's completely ascribed to this Cinderella myth?
Jackie, sorry, it's Susie, but I just wanted to say that, it's interesting. You also make for a stronger partnership, I think, if you're willing to take some resilience so that you're not relying always on someone else. So
100%.
And I think it makes for a better partnership, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you will not have a partner or that, some tragedy will befall either one of you, but why not maintain a strong partnership and both take resilience, both be responsible and both have financial resilience?
Yeah, 100%. And I talk about that a little bit later, but I'm glad you're bringing it up because it's really relationships, in my mind, are partnerships. So the problem with Cinderella is women are looking for someone else to create that happiness for them, and giving over someone else to basically do everything for them.
Yeah,
and that's the Cinderella story. And that's the danger, because if that doesn't work out, where does that leave you? But there's wonderful relationships that come from partnerships and also builds your own self-esteem if you have a contribution to make to the relationship too. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you both have to work in the same way or earn the same money. It's just thinking about relationships more as partnerships and how that actually helps to empower women to become more financially resilient.
And then you can really live happily ever after.
And then you both can live happily ever after.
Exactly.
Or at least we can aspire to that. That's a whole other thing, right? What does happily ever after really mean?
Exactly.
It means different things for different people. So what are the top 3 financial risks you may face? And hint, it's not the markets. I'd love for people to share. I don't know if it's possible for me to see what people come up with, but some of the things that people don't tend to think about are divorce. Actually, I'll just go back one slide. Oh, can I go back? Okay. The top 3 financial risks that you may face that we don't talk about as a financial industry, just some of them we do, is losing your job, losing your health, or becoming or losing your job, losing your health, or becoming divorced. If any of these things happen to you, and some of you who are on this call, all or some may have happened to you, you know that these are the things that are going to be the hardest things to financially recover from, much more so than a dip in the financial markets. So how do we protect ourselves? Because not only when we were talking about Cinderella that this can happen to you, but this can also happen to your partner.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk about what we can do about these things, but I wanted to just, I appreciate Susie talking about who I am. This is what people say about me. That's great. This is where, who I am. But this is my story of becoming financially resilient. This little girl grew up with a single mom who always told her, never rely on a man, always depend on yourself. Since I could start speaking and I could start walking around, my mother was the single mom who always told me that I needed to stand on my own 2 feet. So why I'm so passionate about the subject of financial resilience is I had a mom who shared her gifts with me very, very early. And I'm really, really grateful that she did, because that exercise of teaching me these skills really early, she showed me how to work hard. She had a really great work ethic, led me to become financially resilient after she passed away at the age of 36, and I was 16 at the time, of a critical illness. So that unfortunately meant that for many, many years, I was struggling, trying to keep a roof over my head, trying to pay for school, doing lots of really adult things when my friends were having a great, great life. But my mother taught me how to do that. She taught me how to take care of myself, and I'm very, very grateful for that lesson. And it was really only after I finished university, got my very first job, and stayed there for a few years. That company was going through a transition. They were downsizing. I had a small package that I took from that company, and actually asked someone referred me to a financial advisor, which was the very first time I even heard that such an occupation existed. Well, that introduction changed the course of my life. That was the first time I ever spoke to somebody about money, especially about how money could work for me versus working for money, which was something that, being from an immigrant parent who had a great work ethic, I knew how to work hard. I had 2-3 jobs, most of university, high school. I knew how to work hard, but I never was introduced to concepts on how to work smart. And that's really one of the reasons why I'm, wanting to share some of these things with you. These are things I learned firsthand. I know everybody out here probably have your own stories of resilience, but this is really what led me to become so passionate about teaching women how to become financially resilient, because I went from zero to having a 7-figure net worth based on some of the concepts I learned becoming a financial planner. So I'm very, very excited to share those with you today. So why embrace financial resilience? Susie kind of put it really well when she said, it really feels good to be in charge. You have more control what happens to you. And truthfully, as I said, you might regret it if you're not. Here are some facts. When I was writing my book, Single by Choice or Chance, I did some research, and these were some facts that really, really shocked me, especially based on where I stand in the industry. It really talking to couples about retirement, and even the ads that we do around happy couples retiring together. The average age of a widow is 56 years old. If you're someone who thought you were going to be with your Prince Charming, and he passes away at 56, what do you do if you have no knowledge around where the money is, what bank accounts things are, how the bills are being paid? If you don't you don't write checks, you don't have your own account, you don't have your own credit card, you don't know how to balance a checkbook. These were some things that really, really scared me, and I really wanted to make sure that women were educated around these things. 50% of marriages end in divorce. Probably not surprising to you ladies. The fastest rising demographic of divorcees are seniors. There's such a thing called silver separation now. It's actually a thing. Women later in life are realizing the the ultimate currency that we have in our life that we can never get back is time. And if you get to a stage in your life where you realize you're not happy and you don't have all the time in the world left, you might be, and the kids are gone, the empty nest, so you don't have to worry about raising them. It might be a time in your life where you think it's time for me. So, and women, this was the statistic that scared me the most. Women are 3 times as likely than men to end up in poverty after a divorce. And 80% more women than men are relying on guaranteed income supplements for their basic needs at 65. So here are women that I deal with, some of my clients saying they're most concerned about becoming the bag lady. And there's a really good reason why. The stats are very, very telling. Here's how the financial industry fails women. I really have a problem, and that's one of the things that I'm very, very passionate about in my business is decoding financial speak. I get my clients to hold my feet to the fire, and I encourage you, if you're working with a financial planner and you can't understand their lingo, please hold their feet to the fire. Please tell them to explain things in terms that you understand so that it's your money and you deserve to understand exactly what's being said about how your money is being invested, how what the plans are that are being looked at for you. It's your life, it's your money, and you deserve to be educated on what's being done with your money. So making financial literacy accessible, as I said, right now we're only learning about, we're only starting to learn about money in schools. So where do we learn about money? There has to be more resources available to women on money. That's one of the reasons I wrote the book, Single by Choice or Chance. It is not meant to be a very theoretical book on money. It's meant to be a hands-on, what do I do next about money? So, making financial literacy accessible, I'm definitely one resource. There needs to be more resources out there. And that's really what my passion and my advocacy is around, is helping to create resources to make financial literacy more accessible for women. Also, right now the industry doesn't do a good job of portraying or modeling financial independence for women. We don't see an older, confident single woman doing it well. We don't have enough of those images in the industry, and these are things I'm fighting for and asking the industry to embrace, so that women can see themselves more in the conversation and participate more in the conversation. The other couple of things that I wanted to talk about is acknowledging all of our priorities. Women are not just their money. They want us to talk more to them, not just rates of returns. My clients don't get excited when I talk to them about rates of returns without putting it into a context that makes sense for them. And also giving them minimums. So if I'm talking to them about their retirement, they want to know, in best and worst case scenarios, they're going to be okay. That's nice that they earn 20% this year or 10% this year. How is it going to help them retire when they want to, pay down their debt in the right amount of time? They want to look at the big picture, able to take time off if they're transitioning from a job, able to take care of their parents if they have an aging parent that might be failing health, that they'll be able to still retire when they want to. So they want to have a holistic conversation about money that includes all of their life priorities. And you do deserve that, and there are advisors out there that can help you to do that. You just need to seek them out. So, but the key thing is having the money conversation. Often, in our culture, we're much more comfortable talking about sex, gossiping about people's celebrities' lives on social media. We don't spend awfully but very much time on talking about money. And so I encourage you to have the money conversation with yourself, first of all, and with your loved ones. We really need to have more money conversations. We need to make it as comfortable as talking about all the other things we talk about, our mommy and daddy issues, all the things we talk about, because we're just, as a society, not as comfortable. And that starts with first of all, obviously, people getting more educated. So when we're going to talk about the money conversation with yourself, often my clients will ask me that one of the big priorities in their head, and one of the big concerns they have is, will I be okay? Am I going to be okay? They come to me and they're really concerned. They have a lot of fears around, like I said, the bag lady syndrome, and wanting to know that they're going to be okay no matter what happens in the future. And so you have to ask yourself around this, will I be okay? What concerns me most about my current financial situation? So I'd encourage you to take a little bit of time over the next little while and think about all the things that concern you about your current financial situation. Ask yourself if you're being intentional about what you want your life to look like. And then these are the two questions that will help you to figure out what your next steps should be. One is, what is my level of knowledge about my finances, and what am I prepared to do to bridge the gap? So you have to figure out. Go ahead. Sorry, Susie.
Jackie, it's just Susie. The other thing too is it's level of knowledge, but it's also level of discipline and organization around my finances. So I can be extremely disciplined and organized around a lot of other topics in my life, but finances, I think it's an ongoing effort, and you need to set yourself up for success and knowledge by having the discipline and organization, because it's an ongoing process. Money's coming in, money's going out.
Yes, and the discipline, it's kind of like every other type of endeavor that we'll take on. So if I want to go to the gym, I have to be disciplined, and truly creating an action plan will allow you to be disciplined. If you have a plan, it's easier to actually be disciplined than to try to. So I would say you kind of have to go here first, because the discipline comes. Like I'm currently on a no sugar, no carbs plan at the moment. But if and so someone's helped me to create that plan. But if it was left to me, I wouldn't have the discipline if I didn't have a plan, and I didn't think about what would make me stick to this plan. So
right.
if I'm thinking about a scenario of, if I'm thinking about the money conversation, if I know what's concerning me most, and if that what's concerning me most, I'd be so relieved about. And I'll give you an example. My clients often say to me that sometimes when they come to me, they're already in crisis. So they may have left the job they didn't like, or they may be going through a divorce. And it's kind of like going to the dentist. You go there sometimes because the pain is real. So the pain is real. Now you have a plan that's going to help you deal with the pain. Then you can actually start to be disciplined because you have some relief.
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah,
you kind of
do that.
Yeah, so I find that if people think deeply about what really concerns them, what's keeping them awake at night about their finances, and then they start to look at what can be done, then after that, these are the key questions to ask first, and then you really have to think about the plan, how you're going to actually create a plan. So I'm going to quickly go through this because I realize. So the story of Charlotte. Charlotte is one of the characters in my book, and some of you might relate to Charlotte. She is someone who likes the finer things in life. She kind of looks like someone from Sex and the City, if any of you have ever seen that television show. She was somebody who always liked the finer things in life. She liked to go to museums. She liked to go to buy expensive art. She was someone who worked in the media industry, so she also needed to look well because she was always doing things with the media. However, she knew she hadn't saved enough for retirement, but she figured she was only in her early 60s. She probably was going to work until 70. She thought that things were going to go really, really great for her. Unfortunately, for her, she came down with a chronic illness. So she ended up having to retire at 60 when she was hoping that she'd have another 10 years to work. That left her, she ended up developing anxiety around her illness. And, she was in a situation that she was never able to have the plan that she was hoping for retirement. She had to sell a lot of the things that she had just to maintain really a substandard lifestyle for her, and unfortunately she was in a scenario where, because she was forced to retire early, she never was able to put the plan together that she wanted, and she left herself in a situation where she was going to constantly have to worry. Going into her late 60s and 70s, she was going to have to constantly worry about money and whether or not she would have enough, and whether or not she would outlive her money as well. And so one of the things that I wanted to bring to your attention is women outlive men by 3 years. So the first thing is that we really need to be prepared to save a larger percentage of our income than men for retirement. The other thing is women significantly receive lower retirement benefits than men. Women earn less and spend a larger part of their working years caregiving. And so as a result of those things, we tend to not have enough for retirement. We're always in a scenario, we often are in a scenario where because of the caregiving role that we have, we may not save enough for retirement. And if we're not careful, with our money, we'll end up, some of us will end up the way Charlotte ended up, which was we weren't prepared for retirement. We are going to constantly have to worry if we're going to have enough for retirement. We may be in a scenario where we outlive our money. Now, I often say to people, plan to have the money conversation with yourself sooner rather than later. Charlotte's situation could have been prevented if she did one critical financial resilience tactic, which is she didn't need to live above her means or live at her means. A really crucial strategy is look at how you can live below your means. Often our society encourages us to spend all that we earn for all of the finer things in life, which is great. It's nice to have some, but really think about what your real priorities are. And this is why I encourage you to ask yourself, what are your priorities? Are you living by your priorities? If your priorities are, I want to be comfortable in retirement, I want to not have to, worry about outliving my money, what are your priorities? Because the priorities may not necessarily be having Starbucks coffee every day. It might not necessarily be having the latest leased vehicle. These are things I find that lead people to run into trouble. Having expensive trips every year. Are those the things that are important to you? And you certainly can have some of those things, but how you spend your money today is going to actually impact what you have left in the future. So how planning helps is you can balance your priorities and decide what are the most important things to you. And then, I'll quickly share a story of a client of mine who didn't realize that they had a $500 a month Starbucks habit. They went to Starbucks twice a day, Monday to Friday, sometimes Saturday, and that led them to have a $500 Starbucks habit. That's not necessarily what their priority was. Their priority was getting out of debt and putting money aside for a master's or graduate degree that they wanted. And yet the Starbucks habit was really eating into some of that goal. Part 2, a conversation with your loved ones. Will we be okay? And so questions to ask yourself is, if you're a caregiver, what is my understanding of decisions being made in the household? And as a caregiver, am I advocating for myself and my children? And so there's lots of people who are widows and divorcees who never imagined that they were going to be on their own. And unfortunately, they do have a harder time financially recovering from that. And so it's just thinking through, what am I doing? I mean, if currently you're not someone who is having an understanding of what's happening in your household, there's still time to change that. There's still time to find out. So how can you start to participate in those conversations, even if it's small steps, even if it's, telling your partner, help me understand what are some of the things that we're doing. I often have sometimes clients get introduced to me by their husbands saying, listen, I'm really concerned. I'm a CEO and I have a spouse at home. I really want to make sure that God forbid something happens to me. She knows what's going on. She knows where to find everything. She knows who to call. She knows what to do. She's educated about what we've been invested in. So it's just starting to have those conversations. And one thing I don't have on here, but I think is equally important, is if you're the breadwinner, really having a conversation around money that deals with protecting your finances as well. Do you have things in place, if you're the breadwinner, that also honors what you've built up? Lots of people are getting married later on in their lives, and often people aren't thinking, do I have a cohabitation agreement? Do I have a prenup agreement? I recognize that they're not romantic documents, but at the end of the day, it may be a safeguard to help you in maintaining your financial resilience. So I'm going to tell you about Samantha, the story of Samantha. Samantha got married right out of university. She didn't get a chance to finish her university degree. Her husband that she married said, you know, I'm going to be having this great career. I know you wanted to be a nurse, but you know, I'm really about to finish my degree, and I really want us to get married and get started on our life. We are in partnership. I'm gonna be the breadwinner. You're going to be the person staying at home, and I'm gonna promise a great life for you. And so Samantha never did finish her nursing degree. Unfortunately for Samantha, her husband started to develop signs of mental illness. He started to not go to work. He started to miss work. He started to, was recognizing that he was that he was taking money out of the account only because she started to get bills, collection bills, that she never opened before, but she started to get final notice bills at home, and she started to realize that they were not paying the mortgage. At some point, he left the household. He started to become very frightening. He started to have episodes where he was having really frightening episodes at home. She initially thought she could help him. Ultimately, she came to realize that he was scaring their children. They had two children, Sam Jr., and she also had another daughter who she started to realize she was putting them in danger in keeping him in the household. So he ultimately left, but left her with a mountain of bills. She was no longer able to stay in the home that they lived in. She, as I said, came to find out that they had a lot of debt, and the mortgage hadn't been paid for quite some time. And she ended up having to move in with her parents and sell the house with very little in terms of equity, and had to really start over at a point in her life when she was supposed to be slowing down. She was in her late 40s and thought that she was going to be in a position where her life was going to go very, very well, and it didn't. So here she is, recognizing that she was going to have to go back to school. Luckily, she had the support of her parents, who helped her as she went back to school. And she realized that that was a mistake she made. She should have never not finished university. She should have gotten her nursing degree. But she was going to do it later in life, not just only for herself, because she wanted to see her kids see her succeed. She really wanted to succeed for her children. And so I encourage all of you to invest in yourself, create a positive money memory for your kids. Let them see you winning, because when they see you winning, they're also more likely, especially our daughters, they're much more likely to follow in your footsteps. So, and that could be a positive money memory or a negative money memory. They're much more likely to follow in your footsteps. We don't recognize how we model behavior for our children. The other thing I wanted to talk about is wills, power of attorneys, and living in it with intention. Most Canadians, 56% of Canadians, do not have a will or power of attorney. And the truth is, it's even lower in the single community. And so going back to What are the unintended consequences for yourself and for your children if you don't have a will? Are you in a common law relationship, or and are you a single person who has a child? Do you have full custody? Do you have joint custody? What is the scenario if something happens to you? Who looks after your children? If you're a single mom and your spouse is not participating, or your ex-spouse or ex-partner is not participating in the life of your child at all, who would take care of your child if you're not there or you're ill? Or in a scenario for a power of attorney, who decides for you if something serious happens to you? Who decides whether or not you should continue to stay on life support, if they should pull the plug? Who would you want to make those decisions? I had a client who was supposed to be retiring from his job and got ill about 5 years ago in January. He got ill, went into the hospital. They gave him the wrong type of drug. He ended up, unfortunately, having a stroke, and then he was in a coma indefinitely. Luckily for him, he had a power of attorney, and the power of attorney said, do not feed me if I'm in a scenario where I have low brain activity, which he did. Do not feed me, leave me to pass away naturally if that's the case. So his 24-year-old son could come and visit him at the hospital and not be burdened with, are we doing the right thing for dad or not? Ask yourself if you would want your child or your loved one to make that decision for you. What's the unintended consequences of you not thinking through this really important decision? So who will ultimately make decisions around your property? Who should take care of that? How should you be cared for? And will it be choice or will it be chance? Another really important money conversation to have is with your parents. These are sometimes the difficult conversations we have to have with our parents around the very same issues. So there's, again, lots of money conversations to have. We really need to be intentional. We sometimes need to hold other people's feet to the fire to make sure they're intentional as well. So what memory do you want to leave behind? I often talk to single women who say, one of the reasons they never created a will is they don't feel that anyone will remember them when they go. So they don't feel that anyone will, there's any way for them to really create a legacy. But there's really lots of ways that women, either with children or without children, can create a legacy. I often encourage my clients to volunteer, write a memoir, write a letter to your loved ones, give them opportunities to remember you. My co-author on the book Single by Choice or Chance wrote a memoir where she had given up her son for adoption earlier in her life and then found him later in her life. So she wrote a book about her experience to inspire others. And I just think it's such an amazing testament to her newfound son. But there's so many different ways that you can really help people to remember you. You can write a letter to your loved ones, as I describe here, telling them how much they meant to you. As I said, give them as many reasons as possible to help them remember you. Now, this lady is my very favorite character. Her name is Resilient Cindy. She is my take on Cinderella. And so for those of you who had heard me talk about Cinderella and why she's dangerous, I have an alternative to Cinderella who I call Resilient Cindy. So Cindy was very similar to Cinderella in that she had an evil stepmom. Her dad lost his first wife. She had passed away. And he had one day came home and announced that he was getting married. He had found the love of his life. He was getting married, and she was going to be lucky in that she's going to have sisters. So Cindy was really excited about the prospect of having a mom and sisters. What she came to learn, unfortunately, is that her stepmom and her sisters were not very nice people. In fact, her dad traveled a lot for work, so they didn't realize how not very nice his wife, her stepmom, and and her siblings, her two sisters, stepsisters, were to her. They made her do all the housework, all the cooking, all the cleaning in her house, in the house that they lived in. And unfortunately, Cindy wasn't sure. She didn't feel good about telling her dad how bad she had it, because he was finally happy after so many years of being on his own. So she just kind of grinned and bared it. Anyway, all of this to say that Cindy became really, really good at cooking and cleaning. And on Saturday nights, when her evil stepmom and the two stepdaughters would go out for, evenings where they could meet potential suitors for Cindy's stepsisters, she was at home baking and cooking and, getting next meals ready. She became so good at it that when they'd have parties, the neighbors would request and ask who made these wonderful cakes and wonderful sandwiches and wonderful food. And her stepmom would brag, "Oh, it's Cindy who made all of that." So she started to get orders for all her wonderful meals. And on Saturday nights going forward, she started to operate a little catering business out of the house. So she saved up enough money in secret with her catering business, and was finally in a position where she could leave her home. She set up a little business in the city, started to get clients, and one day she heard that someone wanted to meet her because they heard about how awesome her cooking was. She met what was coming to be known as Prince Charmer. Prince Charmer was really excited by her food. He heard about her from miles around, from neighborhoods far and wide, and he fell in love immediately after meeting her and testing out all of her wonderful treats. He followed her around for months and months. He kept coming and pestering her at the store, and then she finally decided she would go out on a date with him. They decided that they really, really liked each other. They got together, but not before Cindy said we needed to sign a prenuptial agreement, a cohabitation agreement. So they decided to live together, and they're happy, and the story continues. So the moral of this story is invest in yourself, invest in your career, advocate for yourself, whether you're a single woman who's the breadwinner or a caregiver at home. And most importantly, embrace financial literacy.
I love a happy ending.
And because at the end of the day, we're always going to have setbacks. I came to find out, Susie, that these rocks are resilience rocks. They're in California. They're actually called resilience rocks. And truthfully, we all are going to have setbacks. That's really the way life works. The important thing is not to dwell on them. It's really how to figure out how we're going to bounce and not fall from these setbacks. Because at the end of the day, I personally think behind every successful woman is herself.
I love that.
Thank you. So if for those of you who are starting to think about those questions that I got you to think about in the beginning, I do have an intake questionnaire that I use to help you understand how you can use this information to create financial resilience. You can go right to my website. It'll take you to the questionnaire if you're ready to learn how you can take action around some of the things we've talked about to become financially resilient. You also can private message me on this call, and I'll email you the intake questionnaire. It's really to get to the heart of some of your goals, some of your priorities, helping you to start to look at the numbers around what your net worth is, how much debt you could potentially be in. And I'm offering all of the women on this call a 1-hour financial resilience call to look at what we can do. So once you've actually filled out the questionnaire, what you can do this year to take steps to become more financially resilient. So feel free to take me up on my offer. You can either go to the website, private message me, and my team will make sure you get a copy of the questionnaire.
That's wonderful.
So thank you very much.
Yeah, I think you raised such interesting points and really got at least me thinking, and I'm sure everybody else on the call. I will email this information out to the rest of the participants, and they can get in touch with you to take you up on this offer. But I think you really got us thinking in the right direction, and so I thank you. Is there anybody else that had questions before we sign off? No, I think everybody's coming to the end of their lunch hour. And Jackie, thank you so much for your perspective and opening our eyes and giving us some things and some a positive vibration that we can take care of ourselves. We can be resilient, and we just need to live with intention and start paying attention to our finances. I think end up with a positive message.
Absolutely. And you know what, sometimes it's overwhelming, just like dieting and everything else. So sometimes it's taking those baby steps or taking those first steps.
Yes, exactly. If there's no other questions, I'm going to close off the recording and shut down the meeting. But I wanted to thank everybody for attending and let you know that Avanti Women has some very exciting activities planned for 2018, including an event on International Women's Day, March 8th. So look on the website and in our newsletter for some of these activities. And so we can continue to provide this information that empowers women in their professional and personal development. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you again, Susie. This was a real pleasure. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jackie. Bye-bye.